All right, everybody. Today we are diving in to the Middle and Southern Colonies. What? But focusing on the Middle Colonies, the Southern Colonies, how religion reshaped society through the Great Awakening. These regions were very different from each other, but together they laid the foundation for what would eventually become the United States. Cue the fireworks. I want to see like an eagle flying overhead. Epic America noises because freedom. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the Middle and Southern Colonies. So first thing we got to talk about is economics, dollar bills. So before we get really into the colonies, let's start with the big picture. The big picture is this trade, the triangular trade. This was the system of trade that connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Ships carried goods, raw materials, enslaved people across the Atlantic in a three-part route. Europe sent manufactured goods to Africa, Africa sent enslaved people to the Americas, and the Americas sent raw materials, sugar, tobacco, cotton back to Europe. So this triangular trade was just it was basically printed money. It was raining, or they were making that bread, or I don't know. Yeah, yeet. And so again, here's the triangular trade. Okay, so let's talk about the Middle Colonies. Middle Colonies are unique because they were created to be more tolerant of different religious beliefs. The tolerance attracted people from all over Europe: Italians, Germans, Dutch, French, Danes, Swedes, Norwegians, all made their home here. This diversity gave the region its nickname, the melting pot of early America. So just everybody comes together in these colonies. Economically, they became known for producing a lot of wheat and grain, which gives them their other nickname, which is at the top of the screen, the breadbasket. Ooh, ah. They had industries like hunting, coal mining that also supported their growth. Let's start with New York, formerly known as New Amsterdam, because it started as a Dutch colony founded by Peter Minuit. Manhattan itself was bought from Native Americans by the Dutch for pennies an acre. Could you imagine buying all this land for pennies? In 1664, though, the English showed up. Instead of fighting, the Dutch were just, here you go, you can have it. And they gave it up peacefully. So there we go. New Amsterdam turned into New York. Religiously, New York was wide open. Unlike some colonies with strict church rules, here you could find Catholics, Jews, Lutherans, Quakers, and others living side by side. All right. Then let's go to New Jersey. New Jersey earned the nickname Crossroads of the Revolution because of its location between all the colonies. More battles were fought in New Jersey in the Revolutionary War than any other state. It's pretty crazy. In Pennsylvania, William Penn founded Pennsylvania as a haven for Quakers. The Quakers believed in pacifism, the equality of all people. They wanted to abolish slavery. They were one of the first groups in the colonies to call for an end to slavery. Philadelphia, which is in Pennsylvania, is the largest city and became incredibly important. This was the site where both the First and Second Continental Congress took place, the meetings that led to the Declaration of Independence and eventually the Revolution itself. which we're going to go into further detail once we progress through our slides. Not today, but you know what I mean. Southern colonies. Let's get. I mean, Delaware's there, but I mean, like honestly, who's? Do you guys know anybody from Delaware? Just be honest. I mean, no, right? Because there's no one. It's Delaware. I mean, does it exist? No. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. It's real. JK. All right, let's go. Okay, so now, there's the Quaker oats, dude. Gotta love it. Get your oatmeal. Okay, learner will explain why Bacon rebelled against the government in Virginia, Southern Colonies, Maryland. Haven is a haven for Catholics. Virginia, Nathaniel Bacon, Bacon's rebellion. There was no support. The Carolinas, Georgia, haven for prisoners. All right, let's break it down. The Southern colonies were very different, very different. They were dominated by one thing, money. I know it's really bad. Sorry, guys. I apologize. Large plantations with cash crops like tobacco, rice. You have indigo. These plantations depended heavily on what? I'll wait. Yeah, slavery. It's slavery. So they depended heavily on slave labor. Plantations were so massive that families could be separated by miles, and enslaved workers usually lived in houses provided on the plantation itself. This system created enormous wealth, but it also created enormous moral conflict that would eventually explode as we get into like the Civil War in later generations. So let's start with the first one. Let's start with Maryland. Maryland is a haven for Catholics. So let's unpack that. First off, Maryland was financed and created by Lord Baltimore. It was financed to become a safe haven for Catholics. Later, Protestants were welcome too. The colony even passed the Act of Toleration. You guys want to remember that, Act of Toleration. They created the Act of Toleration. What does it mean to tolerate something? Act of Toleration. Oh, this is so bad, and I love it because you guys are forced to watch this right now in Miss Ray's class, or if it wasn't Miss Ray, then somebody else's class right now. Class. Toleration, Act of Toleration. All right. Where was I? Yeah, the colony even passed the Act of Toleration, which granted freedom of religion. Here's the kicker, though, only for Catholics. Excuse me, Catholics, Christians, only for Christians, guys. So Maryland is a haven for Christians. We're going to talk about a lot of havens here. Haven for Christians with the Act of Toleration. Then we got Virginia. Let's see. All right, Virginia, home to Jamestown, which we talked about last week. It's the first permanent English settlement, but the colony often clashed with Native Americans. Why? Remember the starving times, guys. Many settlers felt that Virginia's government wasn't protecting them. So people living in Virginia, colonists, they felt like the government didn't have their back. Native Americans were attacking, they weren't helping them, and so it was a mess. So because of this, in 1676, Nathaniel Bacon organizes a militia, gets a bunch of guys together with guns and like picks and what are those like it's like a rake, but it's not a rake. It's got the 3 points. They get together and they make their way into Jamestown. Governor Berkeley pushed back on Bacon. So the governor of Jamestown, the guy who's supposed to represent the colonists, he pushes back on Bacon. This rebellion failed, and I need to emphasize this. It did not work, but it showed something. It showed that there was deep tensions between frontier farmers, Native Americans, and the wealthy elite who are running the colonies. You guys smell that? Yeah, there's a revolution. There's a revolution coming. I can smell it. That's what this showed. There's cracks. Okay. We got Georgia. Let's skip the Carolinas. We will talk about Carolinas more in depth as we go on throughout these units. But let's talk about Georgia. Georgia was founded as a sort of social experiment. This was England's prisons for overcrowding. So, like England sent prisoners to Australia, if you guys don't know your world history about that, Australia was created for prisoners. It was the overflow. Well, that's what Georgia was, but in the Americas. Okay. James Oglethorpe creates Georgia. He creates Georgia as a haven for debtors and a buffer to protect South Carolina from Spanish Florida. So it's like, hey, we're a little afraid of Spain, so let's make this colony. We'll call it Georgia, and if they got to get to South Carolina, they got to go through Georgia. So it was this haven for prisoners. Okay. Oglethorpe was another person who opposed slavery and banned it at first. So you weren't allowed to have slaves if you lived in Georgia. But he left. And when he left, guess what happened? The ban gets overturned. This is the crazy part. When the ban gets overturned, do they accept slaves into Georgia? 100% they do. So much so, in fact, that Georgia had the largest slave population of all of the colonies. So it's basically like, you won't let us do this, you won't let us do this, and then they leave. Guess what we're going to do? They go above and beyond and end up having the most slaves. This experiment reflected a bigger movement happening in Europe at the time, the Enlightenment. The enlightened thinkers believed in liberty, progress, and the idea that even the poorest or worst off people could thrive if given the right opportunities. So we're going to take these prisoners, we're going to send them to Georgia, they're going to start their new life, and it worked out for them. It was the enlightened thinkers saying, hey, basically it's a second chance. We get them out of our country, we don't have to worry about them anymore. Let's send them to the new world. If they survive, good for them. And look at, we're good people because we gave them that opportunity. Wow. All right, let's move on. So we got these. I know the teacher, guys. It's me. I want you guys to know there's going to be a quiz coming up where you have to know all of your colonies. I'll break it down for you here in another lesson here in a little bit. There's Nathaniel Bacon. Look at, he's so angry, he's pointing. No, protect us. And then, yeah, he's like, I'm too rich. I mean, this cartoon pretty much illustrates it. Basically saying we're going to send in the slaves to take out Bacon's rebellion. Okay, let's talk about the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening, religious revival in the New World. Jonathan Edwards, America's greatest theologian. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. And then you have George Whitefield, the most famous speaker. We're going to break these two down real quick so you guys have a little bit more understanding. In the 1730s and 1740s, there was a religious revival that swept through the colonies known as the Great Awakening. Christian leaders traveled from town to town preaching and dramatic sermons about sin, salvation, and personal faith. Jonathan Edwards is one of those speakers. He's one of the most famous preachers. He wasn't exciting to listen to. In fact, he was very monotone. But his words held power. His most famous sermon, Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God, warned people of the dangers of sin in terrifying detail. Even though he was boring to listen to, he was so captivating with his words that people did that. They listened to him. Now we're going to go to somebody kind of opposite of the way Edwards spoke, George Whitefield. George Whitefield, total opposite. He was loud, theatrical, emotional. He would shout, cry, and tremble when preaching. He began in England, but when he came to America, enormous crowds followed him everywhere. In his lifetime, he preached to about 18,000 sermons to millions of people, waking up at 4 a.m. to begin speaking by sunrise. Not everyone embraced the Great Awakening. Some people thought it was a little too extreme, but it spread across the colonies and had a lasting impact. It made religion more personal, inspired new denominations, and encouraged the idea that ordinary people could challenge traditional authority. So, again, I smell it. It's in the air. There's a revolution coming. Ordinary people could challenge traditional authority. So this was the unit on the Middle Colonies, the Southern Colonies. Talked about the Great Awakening. Here are some of the effects from the Great Awakening. All are equal before God. It unified the colonists, which again, smelling of a revolution, huge impact on revolutionaries. And then we had new sections of Christianity, Baptists, Methodists come out of this. Okay, very impactful stuff. There he is, the man himself, Jonathan Edwards. I mean, look at him. He looks like he speaks monotone. And then you got George Whitefield here preaching to the masses. This is going to be the last slide. Just in closing, guys, the Middle Colonies gave us diversity. The Southern Colonies gave us wealth and conflict. And the Great Awakening gave us a passion and a way to challenge authority. Together, these stories show how the colonies were growing, not just in numbers, but in complexity, identity, and lastly, independence. All right, guys. Sorry I could not be in class today, but I hope these notes will suffice. I will have another presentation that Mrs. Ray, or if she wasn't able to do it today, the other teacher should be able to pull up. I appreciate you all, and I'll talk to you guys another time.